What's going on? REKBCQ signing on for another episode of Rex Room. Today we'll be revisiting the original Dragon Ball What If on the channel. For a long time, episode 1 was the highest viewed video on the channel, and for even longer the most viewed video that I had scripted. Be that as it may, I look back at that video and I feel I could have done more with it. For a bit of background, since I don't remember if I mentioned it in that video, part of the inspiration for Fria was from Masako X's What If Roundtable live streams. I had suggested on a super chat, what if Frieza was reincarnated? Masako and Haverock's response was that Frieza would be reincarnated as Vegeta's daughter. She would end up being Daddy's little girl. When responding to my super chat, I had noticed that they didn't seem to show much interest in making the series themselves. From there, I was inspired to do my own take on it. However, there were some things that I changed. For one, I put her in the future, as well as making her Trunks' twin instead of replacing him. To me, the biggest difference was the Daddy's little girl concept. If you haven't seen the first few parts of the series yet, I won't go into detail, but essentially, I heavily ignored that part of their response. Eventually, I made the video and went on from there. A while later, possibly years later, I mentioned that I made this video to Masako during another roundtable. Being the kind person he is, he actually decided to watch the first episode himself. He was nice enough to both praise my video and give feedback. It was that feedback that inspired this video. He specifically gave me the note that I should have gone further into the backstory of future Fria. When thinking about it myself, I agreed wholeheartedly. If I had made that video today, I would have done that exact thing. However, since that was made a long time ago, I did not. Since then, I've learned a lot more about storytelling and felt that I wanted to take another stab at it. This video is the second stab. Call it Episode 0. But for the sake of the reference, I'll be referring to it as The History of Fria. Before we get into it, I would like to make it clear that this will not be retconning Episode 1 of the What If. This can be considered an elaboration on that video. All the events stay the same, but new events will be added, as well as expanding on what was there originally. This is complimentary and will not go over everything in that video, so please, watch the original as well. With all that exposition done and over with, let's get into this expanded story. We start our story in age 766, when Fria and Trunks are first born. It was a beautiful day out, not a cloud in the sky as Bulma sat in the nursery with her two newborn children. As in the original, the boy is given the name Trunks, as to follow the naming scheme of the family. However, Bulma is originally unsure about her daughter's name. Originally, she had planned on letting Vegeta pick. Since she had no ideas and there were two kids, she thought it would be fair if each of them named one of their kids. This did not pan out. At this point in the story, Vegeta still has no interest in his own children. Unlike when Bra was born in the original timeline, Vegeta hasn't gotten that far into his character development. As Bulma is thinking about baby names, Goku comes into the room with Chi-Chi and Gohan. At this point, Goku would have already found out about Fria's true origin. Because of this, he had to go see the baby. He hadn't told anyone else about this, but he did mention that Bulma had kids. Thus Chi-Chi decided to come along, also bringing Gohan. Goku would immediately go up to the baby girl, blurting out, "Hey little Frieza!" Everyone in the room immediately questions this. Bulma says, "Frieza? Where did that come from?" Goku immediately panics, unsure as to whether he should tell them yet. In the moment, he decides not to, and tries to cover up that slip. "Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, she looks like Frieza. The stripe of purple hair. It looks like the bulb on Frieza's head. Yeah!" He looks away, trying to play it cool. Well, at least as much as Goku can do that. Instead of annoying Bulma, she actually kinda sees it. She puts down Trunks in order to give her daughter a closer look. "I get what you mean. I didn't really understand why her hair is the way it is, but it is kinda like that." She thinks about that for a little. Suddenly, she has an idea. Why not name her Fria? This catches the Sun family off guard. Gohan and Chi-Chi are particularly confused why Bulma would make her daughter's name so similar to a galactic emperor. Goku, while also thinking this is kind of weird, is just relieved that he seemed to get away with that. Chi-Chi is the one to ask Bulma directly. Bulma responds by saying, "I don't really know. It just felt right. And honestly, the inspiration doesn't bother me. The majority of our friends have tried to kill us. Hell, her father is Vegeta." Chi-Chi and Gohan just shrug. Fair enough, I guess. Now that the name conversation had ended, the the Sun family started interacting with the two kids. For whatever reason, the two seemed to take a liking to Gohan. As well as that, Fria in particular seemed to dislike Goku. When he tried to interact with her, Fria did a raspberry in his face. It seemed that some of Frieza's personality was still there. From then on, Goku, Chi-Chi, and Gohan would routinely come visit. Chi-Chi in particular was very doting on Fria. Chi-Chi had been wishing to have another child for a while now, but since Goku would always avoid the topic when she brought it up, Trunks and Fria were the next best thing. Chi-Chi specifically loved the idea of having a little girl, meaning she would spend more time with Fria. Over time, the twins had become close with the Sun family. While they still couldn't talk, they would always smile when Goku and them came along. Fria had even taken a liking to Goku. Seems nurture had done its job there. One day when the family was visiting, the group could hear a loud explosion from outside. As in the original, the two androids had attacked. Goku and Gohan went to deal with the threat as Chi-Chi took Bulma and the kids to safety. It didn't take long for all of the Z-Fighters to be on the scene. As in the original, Goku ends up being severely injured by the heart virus. Chi-Chi ends up bringing him to Capsule Corp. Since she was there at the time, she had decided she would try to help by bringing civilians to safety. Still interested in the Saiyan, the two teenagers follow after Goku. They end up finding the two with Bulma and the kids. Gohan had followed behind, knowing he was the only one who could protect them. Unfortunately, his efforts were in vain. Android 17 ends up faking out Gohan by pretending to shoot a ki blast at Bulma and the kids. Of course, Gohan prioritizes saving them, which gives the androids the opportunity to kill Goku in cold blood. This leads to Gohan losing it. In a spark of yellow light, Gohan goes Super Saiyan for the first time in front of the androids. With this jump in power, Gohan is able to land a few hits on 17. However, the siblings regain the upper hand almost immediately. Gohan is beaten into submission by the androids as Chi-Chi, Bulma, and the twins are left to watch in horror, powerless to help him. Despite being so young, Fria did not only process what was going on, but got very angry because of it. To the shock of everyone, including the androids, Fria lets out a deafening screech. Fria's ki jumps up exponentially. In that moment, she surpasses the rage boost Gohan had. Fria flew out of her mother's arms and lifted her right hand towards the sky. Above the baby's finger formed a ball of purple ki, emanating a dark essence. Bulma and Gohan especially were shocked by this. It looked just like Frieza's death ball. With a look of malice on her face, Fria threw the ball of energy at the androids. While it still wasn't enough to significantly damage the androids, it was enough to burn the two. Fria, having expended all of her energy, passes out and begins to fall. Luckily, Chi-Chi is able to rush over and catch her. 17 wipes the sweat from his brow, wearing a devious grin. "Wow, I gotta give it to you. That is one strong baby." 17 drops to the ground, standing in front of a battered Gohan. He kicks the boy over to Chi-Chi and Bulma. "I will say that you've piqued my interest. I'll let you live for now. Let's go, sis." 17 flies off. 18 looks back at the group for a second and then follows her brother. Everyone sits there in silence, struggling to process all of what just happened. Fast forward a few years, and Fria hasn't shown any feats of power since. Since no one had ever been told that reincarnation was possible, no one had realized that Fria was Frieza. Until Trunks and Fria were 8, the status quo had been that the twins would be allowed to just be kids, at least as much as they could considering the circumstances. At the same time, Gohan was consistently training. The progress was slow since he had no one to train with, but over time he was able to fully control the Super Saiyan power as well as get somewhat stronger. There is a little bit of light for Gohan in this version. Unlike the original, Gohan got to nurture his intelligence side during this time. Fria had shown herself to look up to Gohan and wanted to emulate him. Being that at his core Gohan was a scholar, Fria wanted to be able to study as well. It was nice for Gohan. It was cathartic to be able to indulge himself in that. It was also a time where he can bond with Fria. While Gohan cared deeply for both of the twins, it was evident that Fria and Gohan were very close. Once the two had reached 8 years old, Gohan finally started to train the two. At first, Gohan had high hopes for both of them. He especially expected to see Fria grow in power fast. After she had had that outburst when she was a baby, he knew there was a lot of potential there. However, she seemed to be struggling. In terms of fighting technique, she picked that up quickly. While she did show a decent amount of power in the beginning, it seemed to be plateauing. Eventually, Trunks would actually surpass her in power. Not by much, but he still did a lot to pull that off. It seemed to Gohan that Fria had some sort of mental block. He could tell by her ki that she had significant latent potential, but for whatever reason, she couldn't tap into it. His best guess was that the stress from living in such conditions was greatly affecting her. Despite that, she did often win against Trunks when sparring. Again, her technique advanced quickly. It was just that latent power. A couple years later, when the twins turned 10, the androids put their focus on Fria once again. While the sibling androids had fought with Gohan over the years, they had always left it at that. They would attack an area, Gohan would try to fight them to minimize damage, he would retreat, and then they would go back to their killing spree. It seemed that now that Fria was older, the androids, 17 especially, wanted to see what power Fria had gained since she was a baby. It started when 17 hijacked a news report. He had sent out a call to action for Fria to come fight them. He panned over to a family of 4. He threatened to kill them if Fria didn't show her face. Gohan originally told Fria to stay put and that he would save the family. However, Fria couldn't just sit back and wait. She snuck out when no one was looking and went to fight the androids herself. She had followed close behind Gohan as he flew to the location. When he got there, Fria immediately rushed past him. Gohan tried to pull her back, but the androids shot ki blasts his way, signaling him to butt out. Fria powered up and began to fight the androids. She would throw punch after punch, but nothing would hit. After some fighting, Fria was able to get a few hits in, but did little to no damage. "What's the matter, kid? How is it that you're actually weaker than when you were an infant? Pathetic." Getting bored of this encounter, the androids began to put pressure on Fria. They did a number on her, until she was close to passing out. Eventually, 17 comes up with an idea. "Hey kid, you should probably bring out that power of yours. Your poor mentor will be left defenseless if you don't." 17 flew over to Gohan and began to attack him. While this wasn't unusual for their spats, Gohan was being beaten down. This was the first time Fria had seen Gohan being hurt since the incident. Despite being too young to remember it, this caused that same rage to bubble up to the surface again. Her body began to move on its own. She flew up to 17 and threw him off Gohan. Again, she exhibited another one of Frieza's attacks. This time, the Death Beam. She shot several blasts at 17. She pierced him multiple times, doing significant damage. The scariest part was that Fria had formed a sadistic grin on her face, as if she was enjoying this. For a second, it seemed like she might actually be able to kill 17. Before that could happen, 18 swooped in to help her brother. Fria had forgotten about her, having been focused on making 17 suffer. 18 kicked Fria in the side and flew off with 17 over her shoulder. Like last time, once the adrenaline had worn off, Fria collapsed. Gohan rushed to her and caught her. He looked at Fria with both sadness and fear. He couldn't bear to see Fria like this, but he also couldn't shake the memory of that grin she had on. A few hours later, Fria woke up again in Capsule Corp. Gohan and Trunks, who had been by her side the whole time, both rushed in to hug her. Gohan asked how she was feeling, and then asked if she remembered what had happened. "No. The last thing I remember was seeing 17 attack you. Then everything went black." Gohan chose not to press the issue further. It would only stress her out more if she knew what she had done. As Gohan and Trunks consoled Fria, Gohan was analyzing everything that happened in his head. After seeing Fria use 2 of Frieza's moves, things were starting to become clearer to him. While he wasn't completely sure what was going on, he could tell that there was some connection between the two. Again, as to not stress the girl more, Gohan kept this to himself, but he would keep this in mind. After that day, Fria's training had picked up. She hadn't fully gotten over that mental block, but clearly that encounter had affected her. She was now keeping pace with Trunks in the power department. As well as that, she had already gotten a Zenkai boost after being pushed that far. It meant that now Fria was making more progress than she was at first, which in turn benefited Gohan and Trunks as well. By the time we reach age 780, the three are a good bit stronger than just Gohan and Trunks were in the original. From here, the story goes as it did in episode 1. However, I will cover some extra details to expand on the story. For one, ever since Fria fought 17, Gohan had been trying to bring out that latent power Fria possessed. However, Gohan couldn't quite get that anger out of her. Over time, Gohan seemed to gain an understanding of what was happening with Fria. As he had figured out before, Fria seemed to have a connection to Frieza. Like Frieza, Fria seemed to naturally have a wellspring of power. But unlike Frieza, Fria had a kind heart. It seems that her kindness was holding her back. Frieza was ruthless and only held back his power for the sake of better controlling it. With Fria, she didn't want to hurt anybody. Gohan wasn't aware of this part, but when King Yama purified Frieza's heart, it made it so Fria naturally struggled to tap into malice and negative thoughts. She still felt hatred towards the androids, but it was difficult for her to put that anger to good use. Once Gohan had come up with this theory, he decided he was going to try to push Fria's anger to its limits. It didn't work, however. As previously stated, Fria looked up to Gohan immensely. Even when he tried to upset her, she just couldn't muster up any lasting anger towards him. Because of this, she still couldn't unlock that power. At this point, neither Trunks or Fria could unlock Super Saiyan either. Eventually, we get to the fight at Super World. Up until now, Gohan had been avoiding bringing the twins to fights. But this time, Gohan decided that it would be best for Fria to come along. He knew that Fria only showed these outbursts when he was in danger. If she was on the front lines, perhaps she could finally tap into that power in a more permanent way. The fight goes as it did in Episode 1. This time, Fria wasn't able to tap into that power, since she had been knocked out before anything could happen. Gohan escapes with the twins, but not without losing his arm. Once they're back home, Fria begins to fall into hysterics. She blames herself for what had happened. If she could just reach Super Saiyan, if she could just bring back that power she had as a kid, she could have saved Gohan's arm. Everyone tries to reassure her that she wasn't at fault, but she just couldn't shake that feeling. Of course, now we reach Gohan's final battle. Like before, Gohan knocks out Trunks and flies off to fight the androids alone. Again, Fria notices this. This time, she is determined to defeat those androids. She is the only one who can save Gohan. She has to win. There is no other option. As she did when she was 10, she once again follows Gohan to the fight. Sadly, as we see in Episode 1, Fria fails to save Gohan. We see Fria and Trunks in front of Gohan in tears. As you know, this is where they go Super Saiyan. Something is different about Fria's transformation, though. When she transforms, her eyes don't turn green like Trunks's. At first, her eyes turn blood red. Mixed in with her yellow sparks are flashes of purple lightning. Then, only for a split second, lines form on her face, going from her bottom eyelid down her cheeks. After a few seconds, the purple aura, the red eyes, and the lines on her face go away. What is left is that same yellow aura. However, instead of a teal color, Fria's eyes turn into a bright purple. The purple stripe stays in her hair as well, that was now much brighter. Beyond the physical changes that happened in that moment, there was a mental change as well. In her head, Fria could see the face of some strange alien creature. She could see him laughing maniacally, and as if he were a piece of glass, he shattered into hundreds of shards, before disappearing completely. Fria could feel a drastic change in her power. However, it wasn't just a feeling of turning into a Super Saiyan. She knew what had happened. That mental block she had dealt with all her life, it was gone. It's with that immense display of anger, despair, and malice that we end this episode. So, how did you like this episode? A bit of a downer, I know. Was it a better version of the story I told? What do you think was happening during that transformation? Let me know in the comments below. For those who have been waiting for another entry in this series, I apologize for the wait. Between college and work and other personal issues, I hadn't had the time, or quite frankly the motivation, to continue working on the series. But don't worry. Right now, I'm in a far better place with more of a handle on my schedule. I now feel more motivated than ever to continue on with making videos. For a time, I had lost a lot of inspiration for this series as well. But that's all coming back to me. I've been feeling a surge in creativity lately. And after writing this episode, my motivation to work on this series in particular has also surged. I'm ready to continue on with the series proper. I hope you liked this detour and are ready for me to continue on with the story. Please like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell for more videos like this. I have a lot more in the works, so be prepared. This is REKC, signing off.